All right, what's up, Polar fam? This is our weekly community Polar AMA with all of you guys here. Anyone in the Polar community who'd like to talk to us. My name is Shibbear, or Neil, as many of you know me. I'm the now on the Polar team here, was community manager for Polar for quite some time there. So this is our opportunity to reach out to you guys directly, answer any questions that you might have, give you some updates from the previous week, as well as some updates about things that are maybe to come. Again, this is our direct engagement with the community each and every week so that you guys all have a voice to us and we can engage with you directly rather than just the chat here and there, because that is great, but sometimes that is either misinterpreted or just, quite frankly, not the best forms of communication. So if at any point in time anybody would like to come up and speak live, feel free to request to speak. We will bring you up here, and this way you can talk to us as well. I have Julian, I think. Sorry
actually, it's pronounced Julian, but as I'm German, it pretty much doesn't matter. I listen to Julian as well.
All right, perfect. So I don't want to mess that up, but we got you up here as well to help me out answer some questions that are in the chats there, because sometimes it is a little bit difficult for me to navigate through them. While the sentiment has died down, we no longer have that 250 people in our AMAs. I can actually navigate Discord without it crashing on me every 5 seconds, which is fantastic, but sometimes I still miss questions throughout. So this will help us kind of keep coordinated, keep everything together. Last thing I want is to miss anything, and that's what we're not here to do. So I'll kind of just go into a little bit of things here. I'll kind of just give an update of where we are and what's happening with Polar. So obviously, like we mention every week, we are still actively working as a team as we are engaging for the next steps here, which will be the version 4.0. I do have some information from the developer side that I cannot quite release yet, but it is getting closer and closer as the days go by. I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with how some of these things work. They're not necessarily perfect the first time you put them out there. Code is a little bit complicated, especially when you're engaging with a larger contract that allow it to integrate multiple things as we move into the future. But the version 4.0 will be coming sooner rather than later. I've seen people in the chat say months. I wouldn't expect months. We have a good team working on that now to get this implemented and live for you guys, which will hopefully bring some new life to the Polar ecosystem and as a whole. Simultaneously, we are still working on the game side of it, and I know people have also talked in the chat about the Unity connection. That'll be a fantastic update once we get to that point. That part of it will not be live the moment the version 4.0 goes live. The gamification of the DApp itself will be there, but the actual Polar, Polaris game, that'll be coming down the road. We haven't given up hope on that, so don't fret. We just need to give you guys something that'll help encourage the ecosystem of Polar to grow once again, and that's what the version 4.0 is seeking out to do. So all that is in the works, and I know everyone hates the word soon, so I won't use that SOON word, even though I just did, but I will say that we are actively working, engaging every single day, trying to make this a reality to bring a better product to the community here for each and every one of you. Now, I'm probably going to hear multiple times, either in the text or in the voice, like, hey, when can we expect this? Do you have an ETA? I'm just going to be straight up. I'm not going to give a timeline, because the moment that timeline is altered, I don't want to hear people complain about it, to be perfectly honest with you guys. So at this point, all I can say is that we continue to work, we continue to grow, we continue to build. And once it is there, we will continue to be adding more and more information for you guys to kind of go over and read into, as well as some additional teasers to come. So that'll all be coming down the pipeline sooner rather than later. I know last week I gave an update of the lottery and said it should be a few days. It's been a week, so I think that's still a little bit behind from what I'd prefer. I'd like the issues of the lottery to be resolved so they can be a more fluent and active thing for the community. While it's not an end-all be-all, it's not going to turn the whole crypto markets around or Polar markets around. It does give you guys another element to engage with the protocol with. And that's what we're looking to do, is just continue to grow and continue to build. We have the treasure, we have the community, we have the team. Now we have to implement all this through this bear market, allow it to grow through now into the next bull market as we rise from these current ashes that we are seeing with the continuous thrashing from crypto markets. I think Bitcoin even went down sub 20,000 again today, if I'm not mistaken. This morning, it's back up a little bit now, but it is chaotic. So we got to keep fighting here, keep surviving. No one here is giving up any hope. there's still a great vision for what the future of Polar will bring, and we do look forward to it. So again, as always, if you guys do have any questions, feel free just to simply request to speak or post those questions in the AMA Questions Weekly channel. I know a lot of you do like to use the general chats as well. If you do post in there, I will try to get to them to read over it, but please try to converge them into the AMA Questions Weekly channel, which will allow me to navigate through some of that from there. And I'll even answer some of the questions that are in there that I've seen that I've already answered many a times. I'll just answer them maybe a little bit less brief. So we'll kind of go over each and every one of that. But there is a decent amount of questions popping up in there, which is a good thing. So blow that up, request to speak in person, do whatever you guys need to do, because this is the way to grow and do it. And you guys can post, and I don't know. Okay, if your question is like simply negative on the premise, I'm just going to ignore it. So if you have a question, post it in the AMA Questions Weekly. I'm going to put it that way. So that's what I'm going to go with there. That just is what it is. We've been dealing with negativity for almost 2 months now, and it is what it is, but we're still here working, we're still here growing and continuing to build this product because you guys are invested. At this point, that's part of the sunk cost economic theory, is that you've put the initial upfront cost into the node protocol. So now it is our job to then continue to bring more back to you guys throughout and through the highs and the lows. So that is what we will be working on each and every step of the way.
All right. As there are no questions from the audience, I'd say we could start with the AMA questions. There's a question from Chris Dragon almost a week ago. Hi, I would like to see a marketplace where you can sell any node from any platform with info on its rewards and risks. Do you think having a multi-platform, whether it's from BNB, AVX, Grow, would be good to have all in one place?
Yeah, so that's something that Polar isn't really attuned to. So we have our own marketplace, our Polar marketplace on our DApp, and that's more so designed to make our NFTs tradable in-house. So what that question is kind of getting into is a broader business model, which would be a cool idea. And I actually, from what I understand, there are other people working on things similar to that, which it would basically pull metadata from various sources like OpenSea, LooksRare, XYZ, whatever. And then that way there could be like a one-stop shop, almost like an eBay-ish for an NFT marketplace. That isn't necessarily what Polar's vision is by any means, but it is a cool idea, and it's something that I think will be built in the crypto space sooner rather than later.
All right. Thank you for that. Next question would be from Carlitos Way. Why don't we invest in Horde?
The old weekly Horde questions. So I will answer this again. Horde is a great project out there. You're not going to find me saying anything bad about what they've done. I will kind of go into how their system works and why it's worked to this point, and some of the shortfalls that could come from that if the bear market does continue for too long, right? So Horde benefited by this liquidity manager system through the bull market that we were all in, the DeFi bull market, not the actual crypto one from like last year, but this was in the couple of the more recent months. So all that exploding demand, money going in, they were using that to sell that surplus demand to keep the token stable, creating a pool, basically, a liquidity manager's fund that allows them to work as they are now. But once that demand slips to basically a sell, then they're buying to keep the price stable. So as you can see, the previous demand allowed them to now be buying rather than selling because they've built up this pool. They also benefited because they were able to be stable when the rest of the market crashed, creating another great influx for the protocol. Fantastic. It had worked out honestly perfectly for them. Could probably not have worked any better. So they had that secondary, maybe even tertiary demand because they have remained stable. Where that could become an issue for a protocol that decides to partner with them is during that whole demand period, we were not selling to keep a token price stable. We were letting our token price go up to whatever it was going to go to, just like any of the other protocols were. So you're not going to have that sell pool that they had. You're also not going to have the secondary and tertiary demand variables. So we're talking about an entirely different protocol with entirely different fundamentals from day one. And not that it's impossible to now become an implementation of Horde, because we do have a decent treasury. It's just not the vision of Polar itself. So if we throw $800,000 into this new liquidity manager model, that's fantastic. Maybe it'll keep our token price stable, but we have looked well beyond just simply the token price. We have the goals for the token price, which will be, I can even voice what our short-term next step goal is here in a second, but we do want to encourage a token price to grow, but we cannot sell out the entirety of the protocol for the token price itself. Because if that were to fail and we throw that Hail Mary pass into the end zone from 75 yards out and it gets dropped, but then we look at the clock and there was 6 minutes left and that was fourth down. Now the other team runs the clock dry. If you guys understand American football, you kind of know what I'm getting at there. If you sell out too early because in a panic move, it's going to result in likely failure. And that's not what we're about. We're not going to sell out. We're not going to throw a Hail Mary pass for the hopes that something works because it has worked for somebody else, because they started out very, very differently than us. If that makes any sense to those who are listening. I know I've answered this a few times before. Shout out, full credit to Horde, Grape, some of those others out there that have done great things like that. Shout out to them for having that business model. But we wrote a different business model from day one, and we cannot change the past. So now we got to continue to focus to build and grow and allow the organic growth, the more in-depth growth, the gamification, the Polaris, the VC, everything that we're building here to become the priority alongside with the token price. Because if the token price is nothing, that we don't get investors from the node side, right? So we have to keep that stable as well to the best of our ability. And minting new tokens is not a good way to do it. I'm also not a super fan of that, but I don't think anyone here thought that I was. We do have to continue to claim, allow people to claim, or we have to reduce emissions significantly. Neither of which are fantastic ideas as far as the community is concerned, but that's a separate topic for a different kind of conversation there. So I hope I did answer that. Our short-term goal for the token price of Polar is 0.25. That's where we're aiming for next. Not saying that's going to be our high goal or our year goal, anything like that. But as this version 4.0 becomes implemented, we have a whole section of our work dedicated to the Polar nodes aspect of this protocol. And that's our next step, is to get to that 0.25. And that could be through a variation of demand, token burns, growth, additional adaptation, things like that are all a piece of that puzzle. But that is our next goal, 0.25. If we can get to there, maintain that, that's like a big step. And quite frankly, that is a huge step from where we are currently at 0.04. So that'll be fantastic to get there. Let's hit that goal, continue to grow it up from there, because we're not going to just bail out. And, also you got to think, if we did that Horde system, we'd basically be pegging it to 0.04, which isn't great. That would more or less flood out everybody who created a node in May and a big portion of April. So you got to consider all the different variables there. The theory is fantastic. Shout out to them, but I do not find it to be the most successful producing approach for Polar at this time.
All right, thank you. Yeah, having these fundamental differences between a Polar and a Horde in mind, I think this person was especially asking if we should consider investing in Horde, kind of like a node protocol investing in another protocol. Do you have any takes on that?
Oh yeah, so that would be a good question, and that's something decent as well. I think there are, without knowing the delicate intricacies of Horde, I think if we were to invest in anything, I would choose to invest in something a little bit safer right now, because everything is weird. I know, what was it last week, that a leaf or whatever finance was a protocol that people actually believed in, and 3 days before they decided they were going to shut their doors, they were talking about how sustainable they were, how they appreciate the community for helping them, and then they had to close down 3 days later. You know what I mean? So that kind of risk assessment for our treasury might not be the best approach, but if you did find a way to throw some money, especially in young protocols, to flip more or less, where you're getting into some of them early, that would be great. because that VC fund isn't really for already established protocols like Horde, if that makes perfect sense. I'm not sure, but that's kind of the theory of that.
Yeah, of course. As there are still no people requesting to speak, I'll just continue with the next question again from Chris Dragon. Can you please put a notice on the app saying which nodes are available to buy, or when? Have just bought some AVIX to buy my first Olympus node, only to find that I am unable to buy one or a box. Can you please put some info on the app?
Yeah, so we do have a team working on cleaning up the DApp itself to make it much clearer, much more, I guess, professional looking, but also be able to notate some of those things there. Because the Olympus ones are the only ones currently not available, but it would be good. So when you go to click on it, it just says, this is not available, or just have a line through it or something like that that we could swap out, whenever it becomes available. From a website side, I don't see that as overly complicated. So that'll be something that we can push up and hopefully get implemented sooner rather than later.
Great. Next question would be from For Bob. Yeah, I remember the question from the general chat. What about going back to a node cap and just using the lottery as a means to purchase nodes, or some configuration thereof? Also suggest 75% to rewards pool and 75% burn.
Yeah, so I definitely understand. I definitely understand what that is, what the premise of there is, but without demand, then all we're gonna have is sales. And the lottery, we have some issues to fix with it. Maybe that can supplement it, but I don't necessarily think it will for the average investor. Maybe for those who are already implemented into the protocol, that would be something cool for them. But if you're especially a new investor coming in, you're just going to go to the DApp, you're going to, sign into your AVAX wallet, and you're just going to click create now. And that's going to be what they're looking for, unless it was, just running a whole lottery protocol. One, I'm not sure on the legitimacy of that in general, but I think that would decrease demand to a statistically significant point.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I, I think I still have the discussion about that in mind. We would basically have to run a lot of lotteries to kind of compensate for the shortage of node creations we would have by capping the nodes. The next question was from Babushka. I don't think there. Oh no, that's actually not a question. It's the answer to the previous question. A question from Sneaky. I recall, if mentioned a while ago, polar seasons. If you owned at least one of each node level, there was a ward or similar. Does this still exist? If so, do you also need to include an Olympus in your collection?
Yeah, so we haven't implemented that polar seasons because the premise of it was boosted node rates, which we have we've run into a bit of a emissions issue for those who may not have realized. So I've even heard it's a great question. Same thing with staking, implementing staking. Anything that's going to encourage more emissions out right now, I don't think is going to be a positive, even if it does create some initial demand in some way. It's very complicated, and then we're going to run into a much larger problem over time. And then I'll even have people say, well, then why'd you lift the node caps? Well, because we still need a demand, even though we have that emissions issue. It's just a pro and con. It's almost like a double-edged sword. If you leave the node caps, if you don't have any more demand, if you increase emissions, they're all problems. But from the business perspective, you have to figure out which ones will best benefit the protocol with the least amount of damage. So that's kind of where we are with the polar seasons, with the staking, and with the hard caps.
Yeah, great.
Looks like we have a
Definitely.
Forsaken who would like to come up and speak, though. Someone bring him up live real quick.
Yes.
Or her. Not sure who Forsaken is, but you will be live once you unmute.
What's up, guys?
How's it going, man?
Oh, not too bad. This is more. I mean, I don't know if it's more a question as it is like a possible
You are cutting out a little bit there, my
Gotcha.
friend. I can barely hear you.
But like my let's see if I can go and change the settings here. So my question would be, with the NFT world going downhill a little, I mean, is there any thought of possibly creating say a polar bear NFT that would serve as like a monthly lottery towards earning a node, you know what I mean? But it's only paid for with polar. I mean, that would go ahead and increase the sell pressure, correct?
Yeah, so I've actually talked to Enor about that, and while it is something that we could implement where it would just be like an NFT in and of itself, whether it's kind of the basic NFTs and maybe not even super expensive, and whether it be with Polar or Stable or AVAX or whatever, he doesn't necessarily love that theory of giving something without direct value. So we've kind of talked about how to implement maybe something like that that could bring value to the protocol and those who do mint the NFTs. But I think there would be a market of people who just purchase them because they have a ton of extra Polar hanging around and they don't want to sell it at 4 cents. But
Yeah, I mean that's what I was thinking. You know, just to keep the sell pressure off the coin itself is mainly the biggest issue.
yeah, and if they look good, I mean, obviously I would buy them and change my little PFP to them, for example. But
Oh hell yeah, same here.
yeah, so that's something that we can look into. I know we've prioritized some of the, I guess, more direct value kind of trade off things, but we have talked about that a few times. So that might be something interesting that we could see implemented in the future.
Cool. Yeah, that's all I had.
All right, cool. Hey, good question, man. I think this
Hey, thanks.
might be the first time you were up here, so shout out to you.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. All right, sweet there. And we'll continue with the written questions. But if anybody would like to request to speak live, I do love to talk to you guys directly. So simply raise your hand, request to speak, and we'll bring you up here.
So yeah, as there are no new people requesting to speak, let's continue with the AMA questions. There's a question from a rather concerned person, I'd say. It's from Epic Dead Bot. I don't know if that's one of the questions you were referring to earlier. Is there going to be a way to save this project? I love that Polar has not given up, but it just seems to be slipping more.
Yeah, so I'll talk about that just because it's kind of multi-leveled there. So I've said this many a times. The implementation of version 3.1, the implementation of version 4.0, we're not going to see an instantaneous 180-degree turnaround at any point. The only way that would happen is if pretty much AVAX decided it's going to 5 times go back up to 100. The crypto market influx went high, DeFi went high, demand was through the roof on every aspect, and we also implemented all those additional things that I just previously mentioned, right? So getting us back to that like super high that many of us were experiencing, I don't think that's the goal. So I guess that depends how you define saving the project, because the project isn't dead. The project is dead when there's no liquidity and that the team either rugs or quits. And we are 0 for 3 on those issues. So we're still here working. The price action isn't great. I do understand that emotionally it is stressful. As many of you guys know, I literally left my job for crypto full time on May 18th, right in the midst of the bear market, right? Right in the midst of that crash. And it's stressful. No doubt about it, but we keep fighting, we keep grinding, we keep building, and we're here to work. We're here to build, we're here to grow. So I would recommend maybe not looking at crypto every day if it does impact you in a sense where it is like a negative influencer on your life at this period of time. Check them every once in a while if you need to, but it's emotionally taxing. Even to look at the daily, we were up 20% one day and then 20% down the next day, right? So that stuff's emotionally taxing for anybody. So if that is something that is kind of causing some sort of a rough in your mentality, I recommend maybe finding another way to at least separate yourself from that daily high and low and allow it to grow more naturally and allow crypto to be an actual financial thing instead of an emotionally driven thing. And I'm not calling you out, Dabo. This is literally to anybody and everybody that might be struggling with the market in of itself. There is a lot of highs and lows that are going to be navigated in the next days, weeks, probably months until we're back to a high place in crypto. So I would recommend having faith if that's what you want to do, or disconnecting a little bit if that's what you want to do, and building. And maybe take this even as a lesson and say, hey, some of these higher risk node protocols, DeFi protocols, they have their place in a financial portfolio, but maybe not the primary place. Maybe you don't need to put 90% of your crypto investment in there, maybe 5%, 10%, 20%, whatever your number might be. And yeah, it's something that we've all kind of navigated through here the last few months, but we can't change yesterday. We can only work at today to change tomorrow. So we have to continue to grow and build ourselves while the projects that we're invested in continue to work, hopefully, like Polar is. And we're probably not the only one that people are invested in that's way down, I would assume. So it's a struggle, and it's kind of hard to keep that passionate mindset until the good days come. But that's what we're here to do. Keep working. If you do believe in the protocol and you want it to do better, there are ways to support it. I'm not going to tell you to never sell. I'm not going to tell you to buy every penny that you have. But, shouting us out on Twitter, engaging in the Discord, being positive. Maybe not even telling others to invest if you don't think it's good to invest right now. I don't need you to. We don't need that to happen. We don't want you to do things you're not wanting to do on your own. But in and of itself, the sentiment is a real thing. And if there's a positive sentiment, then the demand goes up naturally. If there's a negative sentiment, the demand goes down naturally. So I'd recommend trying to navigate those different approaches beyond crypto, beyond social media, in your personal life. If you are a generally positive and upbeat human, generally positive and upbeat things happen in your life, if that makes sense. And if you mess up, you learn from whatever it was, or if you fall a little bit, you get up and then you move forward. And then that's what we're doing here with Polar. That's what we're doing with the crypto markets. That's what we're doing with our personal lives. So that's my recommendation to anybody out there. I don't know if I necessarily answered your question, because obviously, we're not dead. We didn't quit. But that's the best way to do it, in my opinion, personally and professionally.
Yeah, great input about mental health right there. Next question is from Arik or Eric. I hope I pronounced that right. Bring the lottery back up. Are there any plans to add different items other than Polar notes? For example, Polar team feed pics, etc.
Hey, if you like some extravagant toes, mine are all screwed up from many a years of martial arts. So my toes go in all different directions. So maybe there'll be a high-profile NFT coming up on them. We do have some issues to fix with the lottery itself, as I kind of talked about a little bit earlier at the beginning of this AMA, as well as a lot last week. Once those issues are resolved on our end, it'll be able to be implemented on a more scheduled rate and allow us to have a greater vast of opportunity with it. And maybe that could just be something like tokens. You could do NFTs, you could do tokens, you could say like a normal lottery from your local 7-Eleven, right? Where you go give them $2 for a ticket and they select whatever winners, right, from the state or whatever side. So things like that will be able to be implemented with it, and that'll allow us to have some opportunity to grow that little aspect of the version 3.1 update as we move forward.
The next question, I think there's still no request from the community to speak. Next question is from Sandori. Can a lead dev or perhaps Inor pop in the AMA?
Yeah, so that's a great question there. So obviously I'm on the Polar team now. It's kind of my role is to engage with the community to try to pass out some of the information that they give. Enor is actually pretty dang good at typing out and reading English, but speaking compared to reading are very different. If you're able to read it, you can comprehend it a little bit easier than if you try to speak it. And you've even seen in some of the announcements where the verbiage gets called out by the community, where they're like, what do you mean by this? It's not that he means anything bad by it. There's just a little bit of a language barrier. So that's kind of my role, is to bring that language barrier to a stable level to give you guys accurate information. I have asked for if any of the other newer team members do want to jump on an AMA at any point to introduce themselves. Maybe I'll push that little button again, see if they can even give me a write up or something, because it would be nice for you guys to be able to learn more about them and kind of get an idea of what we are working with here on the Polar team. And if, as always, if any of the team members, any of our community team, any of our community wants to jump up in the AMA, everybody's welcome. I'm not out here keeping anybody down, so anybody's welcome up at any point.
All right. Next question is from Steelmatic. I think especially to you. Hey Ship, I've invested a lot of money before they crash. Even though I haven't taken out any of my return, just compounding, I've been claiming my Polar rewards ever since I bought in and putting it back in to grab more nodes. Will you guys see me as an investor that will benefit from aging nodes with the new update? Because I haven't gotten any of my returns yet.
Yeah, so that's a good question. That's one that I went into pretty in depth last week, but I'll do it again here because it is a fantastic question to kind of go into. So there are a couple different ways to look at that there. So by the different age of each node with the live system, as from the most basic standpoint, as you create a new node, that'll be a new life point, right? That's a new creation date. So that'll then kick that can a little bit down the road, a little bit further down, kind of like dollar cost averaging. That being said, we cannot completely write that off as no external benefit to the person who put in that new node, because let's say you got in with $5,000 back in January in the pre-sale, and now you have 178 Everests. You are still a significant portion of the emissions rate. What happens with those emissions, I guess, is a little bit debatable, right? So that's where the question's premise is from. But we still have to take into account that you got there off of one investment at one point. I'm not saying you in particular, Steelmatic. I'm saying as a hypothetical. So that is what we're trying to navigate on our end, trying to find a date that best correlates to an actual return on investment from a dollar standpoint, not just a Polar standpoint, and then build up this life system model from there. Add in couple different elements that haven't been released yet to you guys. That'll ideally encourage more investment into the protocol, more money in that allows us to continue to build and sustain the price action, as well as facilitate a burn aspect, as well as facilitate actual growth. So there's a few things that we're working on that end. So to answer it very directly, we are taking into what you've done by compounding into very heavy consideration, but we cannot completely write that off as no investment out from the return on investment. It just has to be a trade-off at some point. So it's not black and white, yes, no. We understand that the compounding, I guess, didn't take out your initial dollar investment, but you've created X amount of nodes from there since then, which creates additional emissions, which allows you to now take more out at this point. So those are different things that we do need to consider as we develop that. There'll be exact information released about that version 4.0 and how the live system and the live cycle will work coming out in the next, sooner rather than later. Again, I don't want to give a hard date, but there is information being actively worked on here, and we've seen it come together. So some of the finite details might change just a little bit, but the theory and the vision is very clear, and it'll be structured to you guys here pretty shortly.
Okay. The next question is a little bit out of context, or rather, it's in context to an earlier question that's been answered. I'll just try to put it into context. Basically, Sindori is asking what incentive might be there to create demand, except us having, especially in the short term, except us developing the V4 update.
Okay, cool. So, Zendora, I know you've been here for a long time, and you're in here now. We've talked, I think all the way back in January when we were both just simply investors, right? So, what I will say here is, if we look at the charts, right, that 0.4 to 0.6 rate is where Polar's mostly been. So, if you were to, in theory, invest in an Everest node today, it'll cost you X dollars, and you are now going to get that 20 Polar, before claims tax per day. So the same demand variables are honestly still here. that except for that we're not offering 3.5%, we're offering 1.85% or whatever it might be. So from that aspect, there is a much bigger issue than just the front page here. So we have our front page issues, which are, the people aren't buying Polar, right? They're selling Polar. Well, there's so many things that got us to this point that have changed every other bit of demand variable, supply variable, sentiment variable, consumer variable, team variables. Literally everything has changed since a month and a half ago. So these are different things that we are continuing to build. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this AMA, that version 4.0 is not going to put us in a 180, but it is progress. And I know some people want us to be back to 100% tomorrow. That's not how life works. We have to continue to build and take steps up. And each step up will allow us to ideally get back to at least a new point. And as we all know, we could have had highs in our lives. Like I've mentioned before that I've been divorced. I've had a high in my life, very, very high points in my life. And I understand that while those were high points, they are not going to be the same high points that I have in the future because they're different. I'm a different person. There's a different element. There's a whole different variable aspect to work with. So in that sense, instead of looking at the past and saying, how can we get to where we were here? I think a better way to look at it is where are we going to be able to get to in the future? I know a lot of that takes some faith, but like I mentioned, we're already invested. You have nodes, right? They're continuing to distribute rewards, and it's not like some of the rebates protocols where you can sell your tokens and call it even at a loss or whatever. Like they are still doing their thing. So some of that is going to require faith, and if you don't have faith, then that's okay too. I cannot force anybody to feel a certain way, but we're here and we're invested and we're here to build and we're here to work. And we've shown that we're not giving up in the community. We've shown that we're not giving up on each and every person who's put an investment into here, myself included. I mean, we're all kind of in the same boat at this point. We have to continue to build, continue to work, continue to grow, and allow Polar to become maybe different than what it was, but different in an ideally good sense. And that's what our goal is here, is to continue to grow and build and allow this demand variable to kind of naturally come back when there is something to be demanded. Because crypto, by the way, is not having a good rep internationally, globally. We've seen the last 2.5 weeks of crypto is dead, crypto is dead, crypto is blah, 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 crashing, burning, blah, blah, blah. Nobody puts money into DeFi during those times. Nobody does. They put money into DeFi when Bitcoin hits all-time high. Some random altcoin pumps 1,000% or whatever. That's when people start putting money into cryptocurrencies as well as into DeFi itself. So we're in a stagnant period of this financial industry that we must continue to build and grow through and allow these demand variables to continue to develop. That'll then allow us to become a priority on the ideally nearer term, but also in the future as we kind of navigate through the variety of issues that we deal with in crypto and finance and DeFi and whatever sentiment that you want to kind of categorize it as.
All right. Sindori is currently typing. I don't know if he's okay. He typed an answer, or she. I'm not asking or hoping for a moonshot, but 4 cents is nuts. Honestly, I didn't think that it would be this bad, and I don't think it would have been bad if some forms of progress would have been present. But so far, I don't see any progress whatsoever. So that's the point that I want to make clear. All I'm hearing for real for 4 weeks, and weeks is V4, and I can't even get an ETA for that. By the way, if you'd like to, at Sandori, if you'd like to have a direct discussion with Ship, feel free to request to speak, and we can move you up here.
Yeah, so I'll bring you up here. So I'm bringing up here live, man, but I'm gonna just talk a little bit while we're doing this here. So if you want, I would recommend everyone. I'm not saying that this is the way to do it, but I don't think it was as preventable as what some people think, because you go look at any other top node protocol out there, any other one that's been around for anywhere near as long as us, and where are they at? Like, I love Thor. I love the people who create Thor. I'm friends with Loki. They are down 99.5% from their all-time high. I mean, this is a reality that we are navigating in, and I'm not saying that this is the excuse. It's just the reality. Even Drip, which was supposed to be the savior, the safe one, they were 170 something dollars, and now they're down to 7.8. So this is a reality that we're dealing with here. It's not ideal, and we're going to see a lot of these protocols fall and fail, and that'll be the end of them. But it's those who continue to work and continue to fight. Even Vapor was over 0.1. Now they're at 0.002475. You know what I mean? So it's a battle. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's an excuse, but it is a real battle that we are all dealing with in DeFi and particularly with nodes. That's
Okay,
weird.
I think Sandor just had to step down back to the audience. His speakers won't work. I think you answered that question. At least he didn't, or she didn't type a new question. So let's move on to the next question from Lychee. I hope I pronounced that right. Is it possible to do a sell tax because of the market conditions and adjust as the market moves to increase the value of Polar and limit people from selling?
Yeah, so we've seen different things implemented, like a sliding claims tax, for example. Some protocols have a buy and sell tax. For us to implement a buy or sales tax on the token itself, we would have to migrate the token, which isn't impossible, but I don't think it's the most perfect solution. I do think a sliding sales tax has a place. It's almost like a kick the can down the road, but at least you get some aspect of, if people are going to sell every day, at least more goes back to the rewards pool. So I guess that is a theory that I'm not necessarily opposed to. There hasn't been a lot of direct discussion about that in particular. So there is some potential for those things to happen. I've even talked with Enor about things like the sliding claims tax. We do want to get this version 4.0 to come out, and then we'll kind of assess off of what that brings to the protocol and make some decisions from there. Because if we just throw mud at a wall right now and a bunch of things slide off, then we're wasting time, resources, energy, stuff like that. So we're going to get some focus, get the version 4.0 out, and allow that to kind of say, okay, cool, this is what we've done here. Now we're going to implement this, or now we're going to do this, and kind of allow that to all come together rather than throw in a bunch of stuff and seeing what'll stick. And really, even the sliding claims tax doesn't solve the issues, as we've seen with the protocol that I just mentioned previously. Again, no hate. That's just me being real.
Yeah, thank you again for that explanation. Next question is from Jedi Gizmo. I actually read quite the similar questions or proposals in the protocol ideas. What about creating a Polar art NFT collection? Mint with Polar and use those resources to feed the protocol and burn some of the Polar in the process. No immediate utilities, just the art and maybe some benefits or giveaways in the future. Just an idea. Thanks for your hard work.
Hey, appreciate you, Jedi Gizmo. And yeah, I did answer that a little bit before, so hopefully you're in here when I answered that with the other individual who came up and talked with us live. Could be a cool idea. I know Enor wanted someone that had some more utility, but quite frankly, if we had art that didn't even have utility, I would use one, because personally, I'm not selling my nodes Polar. I'm either just letting them accumulate, or I create Everest lucky boxes every once in a while. Or I'll buy some more tokens to kind of support it. Pretty much what I just do weekly on that end, but that would be another way just to kind of have some brought back into the rewards pool. Maybe nothing substantial. We're not going to sell it as a some crazy thing that wouldn't come to reality. So I've seen that brought up a few times. That could be something implemented in the future. It's just not in the direct works here and now.
Yeah. Next question is from. Oh God, I don't think I can pronounce the name. Arnevd M2. Is it still possible to get a better node out of the Everest lucky boxes, or is it disabled?
Yep, so all the Everest lucky boxes, they still have those same rates that I have put into the percentages there. Whether it's the ruby, the Everest, the diamond, the ruby, diamond, or emerald Everest out there. Those are all potential to get from the Everest lucky boxes. And any of the other lucky boxes that have the special NFTs associated with them, they're all still out and active and able to be distributed at the same rates that were kind of previously mentioned through I have them in the V3 FAQ channel in our Discord, but I believe they're also on the DApp, so they are all able to be obtained through those lucky boxes. Yeah, I don't get super lucky with them either, man. Like, I made 10 Everest lucky boxes the other day, and I got 1 emerald and then 9 normal Everest. And then I see other people where they'll make 5 of them and we'll get 3 or 4 of the special ones. So, who knows? Some are luckier than others.
All right, I actually think we went through all the written questions. Guys, feel free to add me if I forgot something. Are there any people from the audience requesting to speak or would like to speak?
Oops, so I'll just filibuster a little bit here. Like was just mentioned, if you guys would like to talk live, of course, simply request to speak. We'll bring you up live, or type into that AMA Questions Weekly channel in the Discord, and we'll engage with you on there as well. I see Salty just jumped in the main general chat, so shout out to Salty. He's not in the AMA, I don't think, but shout out to him over there. Hope he's doing pretty well and living his best life on that side of it there. As always, in case nobody jumps up here, shout out to you guys in the community. You guys are truly the lifeblood of this protocol, and that is something I've been mentioning literally since January. That's the truth. We know that. We understand that. We have to continue to work in order to bring that value to you guys, as always, because the work doesn't stop. Just because the token is down and sentiment is low and version 4.0 isn't out yet, that doesn't mean any of us here have stopped doing what we do. So shout out to each and every one of you for sticking with us, for being honestly very, very positive in the chats. We had a couple weeks there of some pretty decent FUD when the whole markets were dropping, but overall the chats have been relatively cordial. A little bit, maybe not as active as they once were, which kind of sucks, but I totally understand it. I'd love for them to get more active again. And kind of as I mentioned pretty often, the best way to support Polar right now, if you don't want to put any money in, that's fine. I'm not going to ask you to do that. But try to engage with us in the Discord, try to, work the Twitter side, things like that. That really helps just change the sentiment, change the mindset, because we are a family. Whether we want to be or not, we're all here. So we are a family. We have to continue to work through it. So definitely shout out to you guys. Appreciate you, and I don't want to screw your name up from the accent, but, Juliana's how I would say it, but I don't want, yeah. So I thank you for helping me out. Is it like
very welcome?
Say it one more time, so I don't remember it.
Okay, it's Julian.
Julian.
Yeah, actually, you just call me Julian. It's all right.
All right, cool. Hey, shout out to you for helping me out here today. It definitely helps me answer some of the questions and navigate through the community from there, so we don't miss anything. So, as always, appreciate you guys up here. We've been going on for just 50 minutes now. I don't see any other questions popping up. So again, shout out to you guys. Thank you for joining us on our weekly community AMA. Please join us same time, same place next week here in our Discord, 3 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. UTC, 4 p.m. EST, 1 p.m. PST, and some other times in Europe and Australia and Asia. So shout out to you guys. I'll have the recording up here in the next probably 20 to 30 minutes, and we will catch you on the flip side.